You're about to make a trade. Which you do you listen to? Is it get optioning those options? Or let's do a little research. Learn more at finra.org/trade-smart.
Why do growing businesses love working in Slack? Let's ask Christy at Ari Bikes.
Running things in Slack saves me so much time.
AI summaries save 97 minutes per week. What say you, Rox from Gosney?
Slack helps us build community, it helps us build connection.
Your partners, vendors and customers all in one place. Take us on home, Ashley from Caraway.
If we didn't have Slack tomorrow, I would explode.
Well, let's not let that happen. Visit slack.com/podcast to get 50% off Slack Business Plus.
From San Diego, California, this is the Frug Life Podcast, the show that teaches you how to save, invest, and earn money. Now here's your host, Mr. Frugal himself, Ricky Hershey.
Welcome to the Frug Life. Right now we have an interesting environment in the price of gold and silver. I think they are relatively high right now. Of course, the Frug Life is supposed to be somewhat evergreen, so I'm not going to dive into the details of what's going on with gold and silver right now. That said, it is an interesting market. A listener was asking me the question, how should I invest in Bitcoin, gold, and silver? And my first question in response to that is why? What your objective is going to determine how you make your investment if you make an investment in those things. As an example, if you wanted to speculate on the short to medium term price of those assets, you might not actually directly hold them. Rather, you might invest in a fund that holds them. So ETFs, for example, invest in a number of things, and there are ETFs that invest in gold. Likewise, there is a ETF that invests in Bitcoin. Both of these funds have expenses to continue their operation, and in a sense, there is a cost to owning gold, right? Gold needs to be guarded, it needs to be protected. Likewise, Bitcoin needs to be protected and not hacked, and so those keys need to be kept secure. And so owning physical or digital assets like that often carries a cost with it. And so those funds that hold those assets on your behalf need money to operate as well, which is why there are expenses associated with them. And so if you're looking for the easiest and fastest solution, ETFs will invest in these type of assets for you. You can just buy the ETF and you are done. To get into a little bit of nuance, the ETF might actually be doing one of two things. They might not directly invest in the asset itself. Rather, they might trade on the futures market instead. So do bear in mind, or keep in mind, I should say, what the fund is that you're investing in and what they do. Do they actually hold the underlying, or do they invest in the futures market? Because those are slightly different, and the outcomes are going to be slightly different. So if you're trying to get a pure exposure to holding on to gold, you may want to prefer an ETF that holds gold. So just know what you're trying to do and try to do that. Now you might say, oh, I don't want to pay those fees to the ETF company. Instead, I'm just going to buy these assets myself. Like I'm literally going to buy gold and store it somewhere. Or I'm going to buy Bitcoin and store it in my wallet. Now, as someone who's been involved in the crypto space since 2013, I'm kind of leery, I'm kind of cautious to recommend that to you. I, like many other people, have forgotten to back up a wallet in the past. I have lost access to a portion of my cryptocurrency at times. Actually holding on to cryptocurrency and actually using it can be quite tricky. And so I really don't recommend it for most people. My other issue with physically holding on to gold and silver, as an example, getting sentimental about things. I personally have a small coin collection. I do have some gold and silver pieces. It's a very tiny part of my overall portfolio, And the reason I try to keep it a little bit tiny is I'm a bit of a hoarder. So if I buy coins, honestly, I'm never going to sell the coins. The idea of selling gold coins doesn't sound appealing to me, like I said. And honestly, I don't want a giant vault of coins. Actually, a giant vault of coins could be kind of cool. Do you remember the beginning of the show DuckTales, where Scrooge McDuck jumps into a giant pool of gold coins? Of course, I don't think you can actually swim in coins like that. But in some like fantasy sense of it, owning a bunch of gold coins does seem kind of cool. Once you get back to reality, though, and the practical aspect of keeping a bunch of gold secure, it loses a lot of its appeal. So if I did have a bunch of gold, I'd be worried about theft. Then, of course, there's solutions to that, right? You, in theory, could use a safety deposit box to keep your gold. But then, back to your original issue, it costs money to keep a safe deposit box. So anyways, there's no free lunch. I think there's costs to holding these assets. And you have to remember the nature of these assets, right? Which are speculative. Gold and Bitcoin are not cash-generating assets. Money is only made when they're sold. And so you are speculating and hoping that you'll be able to sell them in the future at a price that is favorable to you. So keep in mind why you want to invest in these assets. Now, you may want to reduce your exposure to the overall stock market, and you might think that these assets will help you do that, and they could. For me, I do own a little bit of Bitcoin. If you listen to some of my earlier Bitcoin as an investment episodes, I give my thoughts on it. I'll try to link that episode here. That diversification might be a reason to look at these asset classes. If you're just chasing raw return, though, honestly, I don't think they make the most sense, although Bitcoin does seem to go higher and higher. So who knows? All right, let's take a quick break and I'll be right back.
Welcome back. I just wanted to close out today's episode with a few things. One is a disclaimer that, as usual, this is not financial advice. This is just me rambling with a microphone. I did use a different microphone today. I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. It might not be as good as usual. I think this microphone is a little bit cheaper. That said, my nicer microphone seems to be dying on me, and that is bad. If you have an idea that you want on the show, just let me know. It might happen, or I might go on a tangent that is somewhat related to your idea. Anyways, thanks for listening to today's episode of the show. Have a great month, and as always, stay frugal.